When my mother said she missed me, I should have known they were about to take something from me again. The call came just after sunset. I was halfway through reviewing a contract proposal in my San Francisco apartment when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in over a year. Mom. My hand hovered over the screen before answering. Diane Maddox's voice, always perfectly smooth, spilled through the line like syrup. Sierra, sweetheart, we've been thinking about you. Why don't you come home for dinner this Friday? It's important. Important. The word had weight. But with my family, it always meant something was being maneuvered, never in my favor. Still, something about her tone, the slight falter at the end, made me hesitate. The last time she'd called like this, it had been to ask if I could co-sign a loan for Ariana's luxury car, claiming it would help her become more responsible. Ariana defaulted after 6 months, and I ended up footing the bill. Even so, some naive shard of me, buried beneath a decade of disappointment, wanted to believe this time was different. Maybe they really did miss me. Maybe they finally saw me as more than their fallback ATM. So I said yes. I packed lightly, habitual efficiency from years of business travel. While folding my blazer, my eyes landed on an old photo frame on the shelf. Me, age 17, in front of the Maddox estate. Back then, I'd dreamed of transforming that house into a modern architectural marvel. I was the one who convinced Dad to restore the original beams instead of replacing them. I was the one who paid for the new solar panels after the 2018 blackout. But that history had been quietly erased the day Ariana started introducing herself as the Maddox family's future. The drive to Sacramento was smooth, but the silence inside the car was anything but. I kept thinking of the estate, not just as a property, but as a graveyard of my sacrifices. I remembered wiring funds during college to cover the pool repair when the filter system failed, paying off a surprise lien on the guest house that no one had mentioned. Quiet contributions, made not out of obligation, but out of some fractured sense of belonging. As I turned onto the familiar winding road leading to the Maddox gates, my headlights caught the reflection of two shiny, unfamiliar vehicles parked in the roundabout, a Bentley and a G-Class Mercedes, both brand new. My brows furrowed. Neither belonged to my parents, and definitely not to anyone they would typically hire. The gates opened automatically. At least that much hadn't changed. But the moment I stepped out of the car, something felt wrong. No one came out to greet me. The driveway, once gravel, was now repaved in sleek black asphalt. A new security system had been installed at the entrance. Through the tall windows, I saw staff I didn't recognize bustling around, none of them paying me the slightest attention. It was like walking into a showroom of a life I didn't belong to. I approached the front door and rang the bell, more out of habit than necessity. It opened almost instantly, but not by anyone I knew. A tall man in a navy vest and bow tie opened the door with a perfunctory nod. "Are you here for the catering delivery?" he asked, clipboard in hand, eyes skimming past me like I was invisible. It took me a moment to respond. "No," I said, biting the inside of my cheek. "I'm here for dinner. I'm family." He raised an eyebrow, the kind that spoke more judgment than any word could. Before he could respond, a voice sliced through the awkward silence. "Oh, you actually came." I turned. Ariana stood at the top of the grand staircase, bathed in the soft glow of the chandelier. Her hair was perfectly curled, her designer dress glimmering with each step as she descended like she owned the place. Her smirk was all too familiar, taunting, rehearsed. I swallowed hard, my fingers curled into fists at my sides. Whatever flicker of hope I'd carried on the drive here evaporated. The game had already begun. Dinner was served warm. The betrayal, however, was ice cold. The crystal chandelier above flickered like it always had, casting dappled gold onto the massive mahogany table. The scent of rosemary lamb filled the air, as if culinary comfort could mask what was truly simmering beneath. Sierra sat straight-backed, her napkin folded precisely in her lap, jaw tense. Every detail of the dining room was familiar, yet foreign. Just 5 years ago, she'd hosted a scholarship fundraiser in this very hall, making speeches that left guests teary-eyed and her parents glowing with pride. Now all that warmth felt like a distant performance, Diane lifted her wineglass, clinking it gently against Ariana's. "To new beginnings," she said, her eyes darting toward Sierra but never settling. Ariana smiled demurely, tucking a curl behind her ear. "And to women who know how to lead." Her tone was laced with just enough emphasis to draw blood without leaving a mark. Sierra stabbed her asparagus. "Funny, I don't remember anyone passing the torch." Diane's gaze flicked to her. "Let's not sour the evening." Mr. Salinger, the unfamiliar man seated beside Thomas, cleared his throat and opened a worn leather folder. "If I may, I believe now is a good time." Sierra's fork paused mid-air. "Good time for what?" Diane beamed. "Some important family updates. Mr. Salinger has been helping us finalize a few transitions." "Transitions?" Sierra echoed, her voice ice-edged. Mr. Salinger adjusted his glasses. "As per the Maddox estate revision, effective last month, all assets, including the Sacramento estate, the Tahoe property, and financial portfolios, are to be transferred solely to Ms. Ariana Maddox Silence, detonated like a bomb." Sierra blinked. "Excuse me?" Diane reached for the breadbasket, unnervingly casual. "We thought it was time. You've built such a successful life. Ariana still needs a foundation." Thomas didn't speak. He didn't look up. He hadn't since the soup was served. Sierra leaned forward, her voice low and steady. "I was the one who paid the estate taxes when they threatened foreclosure. I funded the remodel of the Tahoe house. I covered Ariana's college fees when she dropped out. And now, I don't even warrant a mention?" Ariana twirled her wineglass. "Technically, you were reimbursed, through gratitude." Sierra laughed, sharp, bitter. "Gratitude?" "Come on," Ariana said with a mock sigh. "You're always so dramatic. But hey, if you need work, I'm sure we can find something. Maybe housekeeping? I hear the guest wing needs tidying." Sierra's hands trembled under the table. She wrapped her fingers around the stem of her wineglass, grounding herself in the chill of it. Slowly, deliberately, she rose to her feet. No one moved. No one called her name. Thomas kept staring into his untouched plate as if he could disappear into the porcelain. Her voice was razor thin. "You really believe I'll swallow this?" Diane didn't flinch. "We're trying to be fair." Sierra stared at her. "You're trying to erase me." She turned, taking a single step toward the exit. Her heels echoed against the marble floor, each one sounding like a verdict. Ariana's laughter rang faintly behind her, followed by a clink of cutlery, the dinner continuing like a farce. As she reached the doorway, Diane's voice followed, sharp and cold. "Don't make a scene, Sierra." Sierra turned her head, her gaze like a lit match in a room filled with gas. "This isn't a scene. This is a memory you'll regret." It wasn't the inheritance that shattered me. It was realizing I was never even considered. I sat in the corner of my apartment, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the only sound keeping me tethered to the present. The memory of Diane's voice still echoed in my skull, syrupy and cruel. "You already have a life." They had taken everything and offered me condescension in return. The city lights of San Francisco blinked coldly through the window. I tossed my phone onto the coffee table, where it skidded and vibrated for the 5th time. Another call. Probably Diane again. Her voicemails had come in one after another, all carefully rehearsed performances of guilt and manipulation. "Sierra, this isn't what you think. Ariana needed support. You always had so much." I didn't listen to the rest. I opened my email to escape the noise, but that turned out to be another mistake. Ariana had decided to change tactics. Her text rolled in like a toxic tide. "You're pathetic." "So what, you're mad because I finally got what I deserve?" "You've always been jealous, admit it." I read them, then deleted them, blocked her number, then Diane's, then Thomas's. One by one, I unraveled the digital threads that tethered me to the people who had spent years pretending I mattered. I logged into the estate's utility dashboard and canceled the auto payments. They wouldn't see another cent from me. Not for the power bills, not for the gardener, not even the security system. I closed my eyes and leaned back, the ache in my chest slowly giving way to a harder, cleaner sensation. Resolve. That's when I remembered the folder. A decade ago, when I helped my grandfather organize the family's legal documents, he'd insisted I scan everything as a digital backup. I'd stored it in a cloud drive, untouched since his passing. I dug out my old password book, heart thudding, and logged into a dusty account I hadn't touched in years. There it was, a folder titled Langley Legacy. I clicked. Inside were scanned deeds, letters, bank statements, and then a file titled Final Will, Signed Copy. I blinked. The date on the file was 6 months before grandfather passed, but it was dated a full year after the version Mr. Salinger had read at dinner. My fingers trembled as I opened the PDF. It was real. The signature, his unmistakable cursive, shaky but authentic, sat next to a notary stamp. And there, in crystal clear type, was the clause that stopped my breath. Majority estate and controlling interest of all Maddox family holdings are to be passed to Sierra Maddox in gratitude for her unwavering support and contributions to the family legacy. My stomach dropped. I zoomed in on the date. August 4th, 2021. The official will read last night had been dated March of that same year, 6 months earlier. I clicked through the metadata. The document had been scanned on my grandfather's printer, not the firm's. I stared at the screen, my blood turning cold. Either someone had hidden this version, or they had destroyed the truth and replaced it with a lie. My heart pounded like war drums. A thought flickered. Mr. Beckett. He was my grandfather's attorney, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. My parents had insisted on using someone new after the funeral, but Beckett was meticulous, loyal, honest. I minimized the window and sat in silence, staring at the screen like it held the answers to every betrayal I'd ever endured. Then I leaned closer and whispered, almost afraid to say the words out loud. If this is real, then they forged everything. Some lies are carefully crafted, but the truth doesn't need to shout. It simply waits. The air in downtown Sacramento had a weight to it that afternoon, thick with late autumn chill and the hum of a city too busy to notice the war quietly brewing within me. As I pushed open the glass door of Beckett and Moore Law Office, a brass bell above jingled sharply, announcing my presence to a place frozen in time. The office was dim and hushed. Dark wooden panels lined the walls, and rows of dusty legal volumes filled shelves that stretched to the ceiling. It was a stark contrast to the sleek modern firms I had once dealt with in San Francisco. This place had an old soul, much like the man I'd come to see. Janelle, the receptionist, looked up from her typewriter. Yes, an actual typewriter, and offered a gentle smile. "You must be Sierra Maddox," she said, standing with grace. "Mr. Beckett is expecting you." I nodded, clutching the envelope that held the scanned version of the will I had found the night before. My fingers were stiff from holding it too tightly. She led me down a narrow corridor to a door half cracked open. "Come in," a weathered voice called from inside. Mr. Beckett looked exactly as I remembered from my grandfather's memorial, stooped but dignified, with silver hair combed precisely back and spectacles perched low on his nose. He didn't stand, but he gestured to the leather chair across from him. I sat, setting the envelope gently on his desk like it contained a time bomb. "I think you know why I'm here." He studied me for a long moment before sighing. I had hoped I wouldn't. I slid the document forward. This was on my old drive. I forgot I even scanned it. But when the new will was read, I knew something was wrong. He opened the envelope slowly, unfolding the papers with a reverence that bordered on sacred. As his eyes scanned the lines, something in his expression shifted, first confusion, then tension, then a kind of sharp recognition. "This is the will I drafted," he murmured. "Your grandfather dictated it to me himself. He had it notarized the same day. That fingerprint seal, that's his." A tremor passed through me. Then the version they read is not the original, he said firmly, and if it was created afterward, it's a forgery. His voice carried the certainty of decades spent parsing lies in legalese. "I knew something was off," I whispered, leaning back, "but hearing you say it—" "I tried contacting your mother after the funeral," he he continued, setting the pages aside. She never returned my calls. Within 2 weeks, I received notice I'd been removed as family counsel. No explanation, just a letter. And in my place, Mr. Salinger, I said bitterly. He nodded. The man's reputation is flexible. We sat in silence as that truth settled, heavy and cold. Then he stood, walking to a tall file cabinet in the corner of the room. I kept a physical copy. I never do that unless I suspect, insurance. My heart pounded as he unlocked the drawer and began to sift through folders, his fingers steady despite the years. Finally, he drew out a crisp manila envelope and placed it in front of me. He opened it, and there it was. The original, unaltered will, complete with my grandfather's jagged signature and his unmistakable print. I reached out, touched the edge of the paper, and felt something inside me steel itself into resolve. This changes everything, I said. Beckett nodded solemnly. Are you ready to fight this? Yes, I breathed. I'm done being erased. Beckett reached for a pen, jotting a brief note on a yellow legal pad. If you're serious about pursuing this, I'll prepare a formal affidavit. But know this, Sierra. Going up against your family in court, especially with accusations of forgery, will be brutal. I nodded. I'm not afraid of hard. I'm afraid of silence. He studied me for a moment longer, then gave a single, respectful nod. Your grandfather trusted you. That wasn't a favor. That was earned. Those words hit me deeper than I expected. After so many years of being dismissed, overlooked, and financially drained by the people who should have supported me most, hearing someone affirm my worth, it unraveled something tight inside my chest. Back at my apartment later that night, the city glittered beyond my windows, indifferent and vast. I set the original will on the dining table, smoothing it out like a blueprint for justice. Line by line, I read the words my grandfather had left behind. Not just legal phrasing, but an acknowledgement, a recognition. To Sierra Maddox, my granddaughter, whose sacrifices kept this family upright when others abandoned it. I leave the estate, the assets, and my legacy. I swallowed hard. The contrast to the fraudulent will was staggering. Where Salinger's version had praised Ariana's fresh energy and emerging leadership, this one spoke only of loyalty, consistency, and integrity. He saw me, and they tried to erase that. A chill slipped down my spine. I turned on every light in the apartment, not because I was afraid of the dark, but because I didn't want even a shadow of that family's lies hanging around tonight. I poured myself a glass of wine, still unable to shake the fire building in my chest. As I raised the glass to my lips, my phone buzzed on the counter. Blocked number. I hesitated, then picked it up. A single message lit the screen. Drop this, or we'll make you disappear too. My blood went cold. The glass trembled in my hand as I lowered it slowly, staring at the words. The threat wasn't just about money anymore. It was about fear, about control. But I wasn't afraid, not anymore. I reached for the original will again, tracing the ink of my grandfather's signature with the tip of my finger. Then, without looking away from the paper, I whispered to the empty room, They erased his last words, but now I'll make sure everyone hears them. They toasted Ariana's future, unaware that every clink of glass was a countdown to exposure. The chandeliers above the ballroom sparkled with an almost taunting opulence. Waiters in black ties glided through the room with trays of champagne, and laughter rose in waves from the elite crowd clustered around Ariana Maddox, the newly crowned face of the Maddox legacy. Sierra stood near the entrance, her posture poised, her expression unreadable. The world saw glittering gowns and raised flutes. She saw a house of cards, seconds from collapse. A distant memory flared in her mind. Her mother once standing by that very fireplace, whispering, "Appearances are everything, darling, even if it's built on dust." Tonight, Sierra was here to sweep that dust into the spotlight. As she stepped further into the room, heads turned. Her navy silk dress moved like water, but her eyes were steel. Ariana spotted her instantly, smile freezing for a fraction too long before she recovered with false warmth. "Sierra," she called out, champagne flute raised. "I didn't expect you'd show. How brave. Sierra returned a tight-lipped smile, walking over with measured grace. Well, you know me. I like to attend funerals, even if it's just the death of integrity. Ariana's brow twitched, but before she could reply, a server called everyone's attention. The lights dimmed slightly, and a spotlight bathed the center of the ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, Ariana began, microphone in hand, thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate a new chapter. The Maddox estate has always stood for legacy, and now I'm honored to carry that torch forward. A round of applause erupted. Cameras clicked. Investors nodded in approval. Sierra took a single step forward. Before we celebrate stolen dreams, she said, her voice slicing through the room like chilled wine, let's clarify what the dream really was. Silence dropped like a velvet curtain. Ariana's eyes flared. Excuse me? Sierra raised a folder. From the side entrance, Mr. Beckett walked in, measured, dignified, his presence commanding despite his age. Whispers rippled. Ariana's face blanched. This, Sierra said calmly, is the original will. Signed, notarized, and witnessed, naming me the sole heir. Beckett joined her, adjusting his glasses. I notarized this document myself. It was drafted 2 months before Mr. Maddox passed, replacing any previous versions. I was the family's counsel for over 30 years, until I was abruptly replaced after the funeral. Without explanation, the audience murmured. Jason, standing quietly near the back, tapped his phone. Within seconds, the original will and corroborating documents hit the internet. Phones began buzzing. Guests glanced at screens, then at Ariana, then back at Sierra. Ariana's composure cracked. This is absurd. You're just bitter and manipulative. Thomas moved toward the microphone, trying to regain control. Let's all remember, this family has always made decisions to protect its legacy. Ariana was more available. Sierra, you've built a life elsewhere. Sierra tilted her head. So being independent means forfeiting truth? Then she reached into her clutch and tapped her phone. A recording began to play. Her grandfather's voice, frail but firm. This home belongs to Sierra. She kept it standing. The others, they only wanted shine. A sharp gasp cut through the air. Someone dropped a glass. Mr. Beckett stood silent beside her, letting the words settle like judgment. Ariana's face contorted. You think this makes you a winner? Sierra turned to her fully, voice low and steady. Number. It just makes me visible again. They gave her nothing, so she gave back even less. Not revenge, just freedom. The courtroom echoed with the scratch of pens and the slow clatter of heels against marble. I sat still, hands folded neatly in my lap, while the judge read aloud the ruling. My name, spoken with such formality, felt almost foreign, but the final words snapped back with clarity. The court hereby confirms Sierra Maddox as the sole heir of the Langston estate in accordance with the original will. There was no applause, no gasps. My parents hadn't bothered to show. Ariana was absent too, probably still spiraling from the gala fallout. That silence, once deafening, now felt like peace. Justice didn't need an audience, just truth. Outside, Sacramento's winter sun filtered through gray clouds as I stepped into a car waiting at the curb. Beckett sat beside me, briefcase on his knees, eyes scanning the street ahead. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. We both knew this wasn't a victory parade. It was a quiet procession into closure. The estate looked untouched since the night of the gala. Velvet drapes hung stiff over tall windows. The gates creaked open, and I walked through alone, the keys jingling softly in my coat pocket. Each step inside echoed like it was calling out the ghosts that used to roam these halls. My childhood laughter, my grandfather's stories, even the muffled tears I used to hide in the library's far corner. They lingered like dust on polished wood. I passed the dining room where I'd once been erased, the ballroom where I'd reclaimed myself. But I didn't linger. I wasn't here for nostalgia. In the grand hall, sunlight poured through the stained glass, casting fractured colors across the floor. I stood in the center and slowly turned a full circle, breathing in everything and nothing. This was never mine, I whispered. It just held what they owed me. I made my way to the library, where legacy was written and rewritten by those with the loudest voices. I traced my fingers along the worn spine of the family journal that once bore my name in gold. Now faded, now honest. No need to rewrite anything. Just close the book. Later that afternoon, Beckett met me on the front steps. I handed him the keys without ceremony. His eyes softened, but he didn't question me. "You're certain?" he asked. I nodded. "I don't want a monument. I want my life back." He smiled, tucked the keys away, and turned to lock the heavy front doors behind us. The final thud felt like the closing of an era. A week later, Jason found me on my apartment balcony, cradling a steaming mug of coffee as the city lights blinked to life below. He handed me a small box with no words, just a knowing grin. Inside, a sleek new camera. "For new legacies," he said simply. I laughed, genuinely, freely. It had been a while. Later that night, I sat in front of my laptop, booking a one-way ticket. No destination yet, just a direction. Somewhere I hadn't been told not to go. Somewhere that wasn't defined by what I had given up, but what I was about to create. She didn't walk away from family. She walked toward the life they told her she couldn't have. The silence they left behind was louder than any apology they never gave. Sierra didn't just reclaim an estate. She reclaimed her voice, her worth, and her future. Justice doesn't always roar into the room. Sometimes it arrives with a signature and a steady step out the door. Like roots breaking through concrete, the truth has a way of rising. Slowly, surely, and unshakably. Perhaps standing up once means you'll never again have to kneel to injustice.